impermanence. Reflect deeply on how these aggregates, which are impure and lack real essence, do not remain once they arise, but perish from one moment to the next. The 5 aggregates, devoid of inherent existence, impure, like a mobile toilet, are a composite of multiple parts. Moreover, once they arise, they instantly cease, not lasting for even a moment. Reflect on this momentary nature before meditating on subtle impermanence. It's necessary to use logical reasoning to establish that all conditioned phenomena, whether in the inner universe or the outer world, are momentary and impermanent. Only after dispelling doubts and cultivating a correct understanding can we proceed with the meditation. First, let's observe from the perspective of change. This is a meditation on impermanence. If conditioned phenomena were not momentary, they should remain unchanged over a period of time. If they don't change in the first moment, then the second moment should be identical to the first. They should not change in the second moment. Thus, they would remain the same in the third moment, as there would be no cause for change. Hence, everything would remain constant. Yet, we can observe that our bodies are changing from moment to moment. From the moment of birth, we undergo continuous change. From infancy to old age, we are changing every day. If we observe this through the lens of modern science, it becomes even more evident. Every molecule is in motion, every atom is changing, and even within atoms, changes occur. Ultimately, at the end of the world, atoms and atomic nuclei will disintegrate, transforming into light and waves and vanishing into space. Waves can be transmitted, as we can observe with the sun and stars that continuously radiate electromagnetic waves. The sun emits a broad spectrum of electromagnetic waves, and the part we can perceive is called visible light waves. Other electromagnetic waves don't affect our vision, but they can be visible to other living beings. The primary function of waves is to elicit visual responses in us, to generate the perception of light. In other words, the image of light only appears after a visual response arises. Without visual consciousness or response, such as in the case of a blind person, even if there is intense light, they won't see anything. No image will appear. As ordinary beings, our vision is limited. We cannot perceive the subtle changes in things and the differences between moments. This is because our minds are not meticulous enough. If we zoom in on an object, we can see its changes. Our inability to perceive these changes stems from the fact that our vision is not sharp enough and our minds are not precise enough. Objects themselves are in constant motion and change. Next, let's analyze from the perspective of causality. From the perspective of causality, things are also in a state of change. This is because if causes were not transitory but could produce effects, it would imply that a permanent cause can yield a result, which doesn't make sense. If that were the case, then even empty space should be able to give rise to a lotus flower. Similarly, if effects were not transient but could arise, it would suggest that the combination of causes and conditions could produce empty space, which makes no sense. In reality, a permanent thing never changes, so it cannot produce any function. How, then, could it give rise to effects? If it doesn't change in the first moment, it should remain the same in the second moment. In that case, causes would remain causes and could never become effects. If rice were permanent, it would stay as rice forever. No matter how you cook it, it would never become cooked. In terms of effects, any effect arises as something that did not exist before. The fruit is constantly changing, different from one moment to the next. It transforms from a small fruit to a big one, from unripe to ripe. Once the fruit is ripe, it will fall and decay, undergoing change from moment to moment. It is impossible to remain unchanged. Anything in the realm of causality must be momentary. These principles are not difficult to understand, but if we don't guide our minds in this way, we may perceive all phenomena as permanent. As ordinary beings, we instinctively regard things as either permanent or non-existent. If we observe the mind, we will find that the mind is the master or root of conditioned phenomena. When the mind stirs, the body and speech also change accordingly. For example, when greed arises, one begins to take action, speak sweet words, and wear a smile. When anger emerges, the facial muscles tense, breathing becomes rapid, and speech turns harsh. Since the conceptual mind never stops, expressions, along with physical and verbal actions, which are controlled by the mind, are all impermanent. The impermanence of causes determines the impermanence of effects. Every phenomenon arises, changes, and ceases from moment to moment. Therefore, anything in the dimension of causality must be momentary. The ordinary beings we cling to are just the manifestations of afflictions and karma, and their body and mind are highly prone to change. Ordinary beings arise gradually from afflictions and karma, making them inherently changeable. No ordinary being in the three realms can be relied on, because every set of defiled five aggregates is impermanent. Ordinary beings lack inherent existence. They are the result of the continuous proliferation of afflictions and karma. However, because we believe there is an I, we remain trapped in the cycle of reincarnation. For example, when we first meet someone, we may think they are wonderful and believe our relationship will last forever. However, this is just a wishful thought. Ordinary beings tend to perceive things as permanent. As a result, when the other person changes, we become upset or angry. But in reality, you have changed too. Are you the same as you were before? We often blame others for changing, but actually, we have changed too. Beings tend to think you are not allowed to change. Only I can change. In reality, you are also changing, though you may not be aware of it. You may feel unchanged, but in fact, your emotions are changing from moment to moment. Emotions change rapidly. Novels often portray men as fickle, prone to falling in love with someone else. In reality, women's emotions tend to change even faster. Some say a woman's heart is like a cloud in the sky, changeable and hard to figure out. While a woman's emotions change quickly, her attachment can be strong. Though her feelings fluctuate, her clinging intensifies. That's why women often experience deep suffering in relationships, not because their love deepens, but because their attachment and possessiveness grow stronger. In romantic relationships, men usually invest more deeply than women. A woman's love is often shallow. Men tend to devote more love to the relationship, while women tend to develop stronger attachments. Emotional attachment is a desire to grasp and possess, while love is about giving. Women often seek a partner to rely on or provide for them. When considering marriage, many women prioritize financial security over love. If a man has a high social status and can fulfill her vanity, she can marry him immediately. How many women marry their husbands out of love? In this regard, men are often more reliable. Usually, men are reluctant to marry someone they don't love. However, many women are willing to marry someone they don't love, prioritizing financial security and material well-being, and then considering the candidate's appearance. I have seen many such cases in college. Once men commit to a relationship, they tend to be deeply dedicated. Yet, women may end a relationship lightly when they decide to do so. This is the pattern of ordinary beings. Why is it called emotional attachment? It is selfish. In the Chinese term, 爱情线 romantic relationship, 爱线 love, refers to giving, while 情线 emotional attachment is a desire to possess. Thus, 爱情 involves both giving and possessing. If there is an imbalance between the two, conflicts and suffering will arise. More love and giving can lead to stronger emotional attachment. When giving and possessing are balanced, the relationship can continue. If we see through romantic relationships, we will realize that they are merely a strong attachment to the 5 aggregates. Attachment usually arises from love. Unlike animals, humans have some degree of love. However, once attachment arises, suffering follows. Why do people feel happy at the beginning of a romantic relationship? It's because at that stage there is more love from both sides, but later on it turns into attachments and both parties suffer. Love diminishes, leaving only the emotional attachment to possess each other. Romantic love gradually turns into suffering. That's why romantic partners inevitably experience suffering in the end. It often leads to marriage and even stronger manifestation of emotional attachment. In today's China, many couples would likely get divorced if they had no children. After becoming parents, many people develop strong love and attachment for their children. Since children bind them together, they have to maintain their marriage. Both parties cling strongly to their child and are reluctant to separate from them, which compels them to stay together. Ordinary beings are attached to the notion of self. Despite our naive fantasies, the illusory and impermanent nature of the 5 aggregates won't change. Even if a person's countless negative tendencies seem dormant now, if they haven't eradicated them through spiritual practice, those latent tendencies will emerge when the right causes and conditions arise. At that point, someone who once seemed lovely may become terrible, like a demon. The notions of permanence, happiness, self, and purity we perceive are nothing more than fabrications of our deluded minds. Once the other person's karmic tendencies change, our previous illusions will shatter. This is the nature of samsara. Before transcending samsara, everything is a manifestation of afflictions,